What's not to love about American Giant? American-made, jobs for Americans, and they're manufacturing top-notch clothing with that good old American craftsmanship. They're also doing great things with the Rescue 22 Foundation. American Giant came up with this limited edition Rescue 22 Classic Full Zip Hoodie to help fund a service dog for a veteran in need. You can snag one on their website, american-giant.com. American Giant believes that work and building up American manufacturing communities brings purpose, and purpose results in a better product. If you need quality clothing like jeans, t-shirts, and sweatshirts, check them out at american-giant.com/Jack and get 20% off with discount code Jack at checkout.
This is the Danger Close podcast, Beyond the Books with me, Jack Carr.
Welcome to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. My guest today is my friend Larry Keane. Larry is the Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs, Assistant Secretary, and General Counsel to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, NSSF. And NSSF, they put on SHOT Show in Vegas. And if you haven't been, I highly recommend it. Now, without further ado, here's Larry Keane. Larry, I'm loving this background. I'm thinking it needs a little something on the sides, maybe a terminalist poster or some cross tomahawks.
There you go.
Something to give it a little, but it's looking good. Looking very professional out there.
I should have bought some of my, I should have bought all the books I have.
Seriously, my goodness. Yeah, you have them all.
So line them up right here.
Yeah, you've got the cases.
Hey, there's one you haven't signed yet for me.
Really?
I gotta send it
Which
out
one?
to you.
No, which one?
I think it's the second one.
Second one, I'll fix that this afternoon.
Second or third one.
I'll fix that. I'll send you both this afternoon, and you can.
There you go.
Whatever one you have doubles of, you hand it to somebody else.
I consider one of my great privileges to get to read the pre-edition or the pre-launch of the Terminalist. You sent me a copy to read, and so that was pretty cool. So.
Yep. I was back in the day, so that's been since 2018, so I probably sent you that in 2017, maybe like spring of 2017, maybe around that time frame. But maybe even before that. But
it was before you. Remember, we had you speak at our PAC event.
Yeah. I was trying to remember what January that was. Was that 2017?
16 or 17?
Somewhere in there.
You were fairly recently out of the teams, and this 17. Was the first book, and yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was one of my first ones. I think I over prepared for that one. I tell you what, you were a big hit. I hear from industry folks that were there saying, "Oh, that was really great. That was great. Oh, that's the guys written all the books." Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I hope to make it back. I really wanted to make it this last year, and I was so behind on the writing because there's so much going on with the show and scripts for another season and next book and the podcast and the merch and the whole thing. And it's a lot. It's fantastic. But what I really miss is going to SHOT Show. I absolutely love it. As you know, I was there.
You're always welcome.
Oh,
we had a conversation when you couldn't make it last year about maybe, like, I know for Amazon, filming for the next series about maybe doing something at SHOT Show. So
I was just talking about it the other day. I was just talking about it yesterday with the producers, and so we're figuring that side out. It's hard right now because we're figuring out the actual schedule because of the writer's strike. Yeah. So we didn't know how long that was going to last. It ended up lasting quite a while. So it put us behind by a good few months as far as filming for the Ben Edwards origin story. So we're working through all that right now, but it would be amazing. That's what I wrote in an email yesterday, to do something at SHOT, timing wise. They're on schedules. They have their algorithms that say when you should launch a trailer or a teaser, and then when you start doing things in a lead up to launch and all that. So it's really fascinating. I love learning all that. But yeah, I miss it. I miss being there. And of course, I was there. The first one I was thinking was 2003, 2004, and I forget which exact. I think it was 2004 maybe, but it was in Vegas. And and the tactical room was about the size of this podcast studio right here. And then the next year, it was not. Yeah, the next year it was not like that. It was huge. But it was still that first year I was there. A couple of years into the war, it was still more hunting.
It really
and
tied
fishing.
into the sunset of the Clinton assault weapons ban. Right after that, that segment of the market just exploded.
Okay.
Right. And it also tied into, the war and a lot of folks coming back from having served and taking up shooting. And so that market just exploded.
Yeah.
And it was the fastest growing segment of the show for a long, long time. It may still be. We actually just learned or put out yesterday that the SHOT Show is now the 8th largest show in the United States.
Wow.
All the shows that are done.
No kidding.
It's the biggest, it's the biggest event that is done. And now we're over in the Venetian and the Sands, what was called Sands now is called Venetian Expo. The Sands company sold it. But so we're the biggest thing they do. We're now across the street. You haven't been to it yet. The Caesars Forum across the way, the alley. So we're up to like 850,000 square feet of exhibit space. Jeez. It's never been bigger.
That's what's the biggest show? Is like Consumer Electronics Show? Is that bigger or what's
Consumer Electronics, which goes just a little before us? It's the biggest. That takes over the whole town. And then there are some other shows that have big footprints, like World of Concrete, I think, and a couple of others. But they're like large machinery that takes up a lot of space. So the SHOT Show is the big deal.
And it's so much fun.
It's the biggest. Yeah.
It's a reunion.
Biggest show of its kind in the world.
Yeah. And it's a reunion for me. I get to see you. I get to see buddies I serve with. I get to see people that I've met at SHOT Show over all these years, first starting off as just genuine friendships. And now some have grown into business relationships and not even, and I shouldn't say business relationships because it's more of we can help each other because of that past friendship that was just based on a genuine friendship and this common thing we all have in common, which is this love of freedom and defending the means to make sure that future generations continue to be free. So there's something that bonds everyone at SHOT Show and in this industry that makes it a lot different than any other industries out there. And I noticed that right off the bat from my first time there in 2003, 2004, there was something different about these groups, even groups that are competitors, even companies that are obviously competitors with similar products. There's something that bonds them all together. And then there's always, of course, people in this space, very competitive. And so it just makes everybody raise their game as well. So it's a really cool space to be involved in.
There's so much passion in this industry, for the Second Amendment, for hunting, for shooting sports. And people, companies are knockdown, drag out competitors in the marketplace, but they serve together on our board. They know each other. They become, they're close friends. They go hunting together. They go shooting together. So it's really special. I've been privileged, to be part of this for a long time. So.
Yeah, I was trying to think. Like I know I've asked you, but I couldn't quite remember. What was your path into the position that you're in now? Did you grow up hunting and shooting, and then how did you get into this
No,
space?
actually, it's I grew up. I was born in the shadows of Belmont Racetrack, right? Like you could chip on from my house where I grew up as a very young kid. My dad was a New York City cop.
Okay,
and he was a Korean Marine vet, got the Purple Heart at the Chosen. And then we moved out a little bit further out onto Long Island, not very far, seemed far at the time, but reality was only a couple of miles. And then, I went to college, went to law school, and, what I wanted to do was be a prosecutor, right? Because just coming from the background of a cop family, my uncles were cops, et cetera. So I worked as a prosecutor in New York for a bunch of years. I actually worked during law school. I worked in the Manhattan DA's office for 2 years. I put myself through law school at night. And then I went to work in Westchester County DA's office just north of New York. And I worked with Janine Pirro. I had a big case in front of her when she was a judge, a big white collar organized crime case that I prosecuted. And then I worked for her for a short time. And then I went into private practice at a boutique product liability firm. So I was got basically all of its work from Italian insurance companies. So I started representing Italian manufacturers, and then I started working on the gun cases. So I became Beretta's product liability counsel in North America for a bunch of years. I represented Uberti, Perazzi. I had a couple of Colt cases. So that I got involved in sort of some of the political litigation that was going on that were being filed against, in that case, Beretta. It was a big case in Brooklyn, New York, in federal court called Hamilton, which was sort of the precursor to all of the industry litigation that took place in the municipal lawsuits. And then NSSF, which is the industry's trade association, at that time, like 1999, 2000, by its charter, couldn't do any lobbying or government relations work. But with the onslaught of litigation against the industry, chiefly the handgun manufacturers, by all these Democrat mayors across the country, inside of it was sort of an alliance between these Democrat mayors, big city mayors with big crime problems in their cities, these plaintiffs' lawyers that were involved in the tobacco litigation back in the 90s, but had bet wrong in tobacco. They didn't become part of the settlement between tobacco and the state's attorney generals. And so they didn't get a big payday. So they were looking for a payday. And then the gun control groups, which at the time was just what's now called Brady United. They've changed their name along the way. So NSSF became the coordinating hub of the industry defense. And NSSF had been named as a defendant in most of those cases. So I came on as the first general counsel to sleepy little NSSF, which maybe had, I don't know, under 20 people, I think, at the time in 2000. Okay. And now we're 55 something people. So, became really just as litigation, dealing with that and helping to coordinate all of the national counsel that were defending the companies and the general counsels, and then starting to work on legislative solutions to the litigation as well as fighting the cases. So started doing that, and then next thing you know, 23 years have gone by. Yeah. So we're more than 23 years. So,
geez. So you'd only been there for 3 or 4 years by the time I showed up at SHOT Show with another SEAL buddy of mine, wandering around there, checking everything out, saying, "Oh my gosh, this is an amazing organization."
Oh, it was a lot smaller than that, wasn't it?
It was
about half the size.
It was different. You could probably see most of it. Now you could spend the whole week there and not see everything, even if you had a good plan. And there's no possible way to see every single booth. I don't think. I mean, I might be wrong. Someone can tell me below. In the comments.
We have these. I don't have them handy, but if you went to every single booth at the show, you could spend like a couple of seconds, like well under a minute
at everyone
to make it to every single booth. Right? It's we have all these apps. You have to plan the show. So people get us. Oh, can I go to SHOT Show? And sorry, it's not open to the public. It's not a consumer show. It's just a B2B show. But we obviously have a lot of military law enforcement, both U.S. and foreign military and law enforcement buyers that come. And obviously a lot of, all the armed uniform branches are there. The SEALs are there, all the SOCOM is there.
Oh yeah, it's a great reunion.
Separate budgets,
Yeah. I know some people that just go now and don't even go in. They just hang out in the bars outside and just for the reunion, shake hands, say hello. I mean, it's so big that you can do that and have an amazing time, catch up with people. And it's just the whole thing. I mean, it's just, I love the reunion aspect of it. That's what I like. And I love the camaraderie and I love the connection, and reconnecting with people you haven't seen in a year or 2 years or 5 years, whatever it might be. And then being able to help them along, especially if they're leaving the military or have left for a couple of years, and you can open that door, make that introduction, or do something to help. And it's just
well, and there's
amazing.
I've spoken with some of our mutual friends in Nashville, and when they were on the teams, going in and having meetings with companies and say, well, why don't you turn it this way? And the next year they come back and it's been turned. And you know what
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was really a unique time to be able to go to a place and meet not just the senior level people, not just marketing people, but the designers and creators, and sit down with them and say, hey, this is what I was doing in Afghanistan and Iraq, and this part failed, or you know how you could make this a little better, or you know what everybody's doing on their own to tweak this is this. And then the next year you come back and lo and behold, that's been made. So it was a really interesting nexus of private, governmental, but it wasn't sanctioned. It was like guys just did it because we're trying to adapt on the battlefield. We're trying to adapt quicker than the enemy. And by necessity, like, oh, this can help us. Well, then I'm going to go there and I'm going to do these things, and it's going to help us on the battlefield, not just me and my team, but it's going to help other people as well on the battlefield. So it was really a unique time to be involved with in the military and with NSSF. And I think just by having that show and those relationships, obviously afterward, it has worked out for a lot of guys as well, because it's introduced them to people that gave them a path into leaving the military into something they love and the space that they know. But it was just such a unique time, and it was very, very special. I think I have very fond memories of my time, and I tried to make everyone. If I wasn't deployed, I would go, and this is on my own, my own dime. Guys are going on their own dime in many cases, because it was so important to do that, to see this gear and to give those little suggestions and tweaks, or see something that you didn't know existed out there, because the private sector is innovating quicker than the government side of the house. And if you had the ability, you could either buy it yourself, or they give it to you to test, or you could go back and say, hey, we need to buy these for my platoon, for my troop, for my team. And I mean, it really helped the war effort, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, we're very proud of that. And of course, I wouldn't want the audience to get the wrong idea, or an incorrect idea. The show that's a segment of the show. There's, it's the biggest hunting show in terms of equipment. It's the biggest show for footwear. It's the biggest show for optics. It's the biggest knife show, and now archery is in the show as well. So I know you really like that.
Oh yeah!
Next time you can make it out.
Yeah.
So
I was hoping to make it this January, but I don't know if it's going to happen because of filming schedules and things like that. But you know what I also like? I like that bottom level. Because up top you have the names that most people know. Downstairs, they're hungry down there. And you go down there.
That's where all the fines are.
Yeah, exactly. I love going down there and walking around, because they're hungry, and there's some little thing that they don't have the money to advertise, or they don't have a presence on now social channels or whatever it might be. They don't have enough money to be upstairs front and center, but they're hungry. Yeah. And I like walking around down there and checking all that stuff.
Downstairs is more crowded than upstairs.
Oh, really? These days, the whole thing seems pretty crowded.
Yeah, well, it is. Although adding the Caesars Forum space has helped thin out how crowded the aisles are, because it's just same number of people but more square footage, so it's a little more spread out. And frankly, we've been working on trying to improve the quality of the attendee. So, we try to screen people coming to the show. They got to be connected to the industry and not be, quote unquote, tire kickers. And so, but honestly, the exhibitors are probably the worst offender of bringing the tire kickers. They bring their frat bro, their buddies, and their brother-in-law. But we also have retailers bringing their best customers. And so it's kind of a tension trying to improve the quality, and because people would complain it's too crowded. I can't move around. I can't get from this booth to the next booth. So it's much, I mean,
it's a good problems to have. You might see that I collaborate with Ironclad on a lot of different projects. In fact, I have worked with them on my book trailers, this podcast, as well as a few other exciting endeavors that are currently in development. Ironclad teams up with some of the biggest brands in the world to create dynamic films, series, podcasts, and ad campaigns. If you are a brand or individual looking to elevate your content or start a podcast, don't hesitate to reach out through their website. This is ironclad.com, and make sure you follow them on all major platforms at This Is Ironclad.
So last year was the first real test of it coming out of COVID with the additional space. Because even, we didn't have a show in 21. We had to cancel because of COVID. So we just were able to kind of sneak in the 20 show right before everything shut down. And
I was there.
And then 22 was better, but there was still a little people holding back with risk of COVID. But now last year was back, totally back, and so we'll be in Vegas for the foreseeable future for many, many years. We've got contracts signed out, I think, through 28.
Oh, nice.
I have a hard time seeing us ever leave Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's it's so much fun. People expect it to be there too. Some shows can get away with moving around to different cities, and that's part of their thing. But you've got it dialed. I mean, I can imagine how difficult it would be to go to like a different city, a convention center every year, how much additional effort that would take to figure out those floor plans and all of these different convention centers. Oh.
Yeah. And there's, at this point, very few places we conceivably go to, given the size of the show now. And some of them are just, off limits, like, couldn't go to the McCormick Center in Chicago for obvious reasons. Plus, we got to be somewhere, we don't have a risk of weather, right? So if Chicago in January, you have a storm. And so
you're in a good spot.
The other places like, Orange County, Florida in Orlando, but we've been there, but we couldn't get the dates we needed. And we always take a hit on attendance.
Yeah.
And, Orlando and Disney is just not the same as Vegas. And then we survey our attendees and exhibitors every year to get feedback, right? And nobody wants to leave Vegas. I mean, we hear some people say, I don't like going to Vegas. You should move. But the reality is overwhelming.
Yeah. Then they have a great time when they're there. Yeah.
And it's so important to what NSSF does. It's, it really is, generates the lion's share of our revenue that supports all the things that we do.
Yeah.
Promote hunting, shooting, and on the political side, the stuff that I run. So
Well, in 2020, that was one of the last times we all could get together before everything got crazy. I brought my publicist out from New York, and so he couldn't believe it. He was just walking around looking at all this stuff, and he couldn't believe and I think he said, I'll paraphrase a little bit, but he's like, everybody's so normal. Because if you're not like in that space, if it's totally foreign to you, and all you read is the stereotypes of people that might go to a show like that, and then you go and you're like, oh wow, there's some people in suits right there. There's somebody in a flannel. Look at, they're shaking hands, saying hi, and there's all these different people from all over the world, and it's just so he had an incredible time. We all had a blast, and I met Lee Child there, and he gave me some amazing advice years ago before I published my novel. And then I met Vince Flynn there before he passed away.
Yeah.
And I got to meet him he was signing books, and I met him right at the end of the day. So I think 4:30, whenever it shuts down, and you start leaving. And so people who have been there know that if you're at one side of that show and you're trying to get out, or you're in the middle and you're trying to get out, it could take a couple minutes. And so I was talking to him right at the end of the show, and he treated me like I didn't tell him that I wanted to be an author, but the way he treated me, I'll never forget. And I got to ask him about term limits, his first novel. And I asked him if he ever worried about waking up one morning and turning on the news and seeing that someone had used that book as a template to take some action. And he said, every day. I'll never forget that.
Wow.
And then we got to walk out of the show together. So we got to spend, a half hour, 35, 40, 45 minutes, whatever it took to get out to the front, walking out together. So I'll never forget that. That was very special.
Well, you see, Hollywood celebrities, professional athletes, authors, politicians.
Yeah, met a ton of amazing people. Met a ton of amazing people through the show. But that's a week, and that takes a lot of planning. And I'm sure that is you have a team that's just focused on that. But there's so many other things that you guys are doing, both publicly and then behind the scenes to shape the environment, to defend freedom for future generations. And I wanted to ask you about what is the state, when you look at the state of the union, the state of the country. And as far as defending the Second Amendment, what do you see right now? We have a recent announcement from the White House. A new office has been created at the White House, and what's going on when you survey your space?
Yeah, it's a challenging environment, and I think it just reflects what's going on in the country. You just see sadly, the country sort of tearing apart. You have red states and blue states, and we have a very hostile administration. The president of the United States calling the firearms industry the enemy repeatedly, making false claims. And then you have an ATF that is pursuing the zero tolerance policy and trying to revoke licenses of dealers. And that's frustrating and I think misguided. And talking to people both inside and retired from ATF, they agree that it's not a good idea. They're discouraging retailers from cooperating with ATF, and retailers are the primary source of information to ATF that leads to illegal firearms trafficking investigations. And if you're a retailer now and you're going to make that phone call because you got to worry, are they going to come in and inspect me and find some mistake and revoke my license and put me out of business? Or, people would say, we found we made a mistake. How do we fix this? What's the right way to do this? Sort of what's known in the law as self-reporting. Well, are you going to do that now? That's going to yield an inspection and you find one mistake and they say it's a willful violation. So it's a challenging environment. We see the kind of usual list of suspects, states passing more and more gun control measures, even after the Supreme Court decision in Bruin, which is very, very important and a real game changer. Just pushing the envelope and sort of like these public places laws, right? Like everything, you leave your house, public place, you can't carry firearms, self-protection. So those are very challenging. We also have a lot of issues on the sort of business side where banks won't lend to companies, insurance companies won't insure members of the industry, can't use PayPal, you can't use Facebook, so there's no shortage of challenges. But we do the best we can. And I think, we're having more and more success. And I know we're being successful because we're getting attacked by the gun control groups, by Every Town, which is funded by Michael Bloomberg, put out an attack piece a couple of months ago and chiefly aimed at me and including a picture. I tell you, Jack, I was really, really offended by this report they put out because they use a really bad picture. And I look really fat in that picture. And I'm like, hey, come on, I lost some weight. Use a better picture.
Yeah, they're going to try to make you look as terrible as possible.
Right. And now they put up a website called The Smoking Gun and just a regurgitation. It's a fundraising mechanism, but, it's a backhanded compliment, right? I mean, they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't think we were effective. They would just ignore us. So that they're not ignoring us means we're doing a good job. And there was another story in the Guardian newspaper, which is like an English tabloid, but has a circulation in the U.S. And, they had some quotes in there that were just hilarious, about NSSF. And it was like the best marketing piece we could have ever asked for.
Oh, nice. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I say, go get a hard copy of that and frame it and hang it in our office in Washington, D.C.
Nice. Nice.
They said we were insidious,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's it's so polarizing. And could you run down quickly for those who are like, where's brewing? Chicago, New York,
sure.
Supreme Court, or the three big cases over the last, now it's been, 15 anyway.
Since 2008. Yeah. So the first one was obviously the Heller decision by the Supreme Court in 2008, where they held or really affirmed that the Second Amendment provides an individual right to keep and bear arms for self-defense, and the people means the individual. And so that kind of put to rest the argument from the other side that it's a collective right or it belongs to the militia, not the individual. So a seminal case on the Second Amendment. That was followed later because that was the Washington, D.C. Handgun ban. But it only applied to the federal government. So Donald case versus Chicago, the Supreme Court applied the Second Amendment to the states through what's called the 14th Amendment. So the federal Constitution doesn't normally apply to the states. The restrictions on the federal government. So through the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, it applied it to the states. What's known as the incorporation doctrine. So there'll be a quiz at the end of the show, everybody. And then lots of litigation on that about what did Heller really mean? What's the scope? And then there was a case out of New York decided in 22 called Bruin, who was the head of the New York State Police at the time. And there, Justice Thomas, writing for the court, said that the test, the right to keep and bear arms includes to bear arms, as Scalia explained in Heller, means you can carry it outside of the home, it's not a right just cabined to your house, but set out the correct test for applying the Second Amendment, like history and tradition at the time of the founding up until the time of the 14th Amendment was adopted after the Civil War. And it's not this interest-bearing test where the government always wins, So that's really been a game changer. And you're seeing a lot of litigation where courts are saying, striking down more and more laws on the basis of the Bruin decision, but other courts saying, for example, a couple of courts have said that a magazine is not an arm, it's just an accessory, and it's not protected at all by the Second Amendment. That's like saying, you have a right to drive a car, but tires can be banned because they're not part of the car. They're just an accessory.
Right.
And which is a really specious argument, frankly, and I don't think it'll hold up. But we continue to see, these litigations. And now you have the case in California, Duncan, which is headed back to the Ninth Circuit, where the district court judge ruled for the second time, but this time post-Bruin, that you can't ban magazines larger than 10 rounds, which is a totally arbitrary number, under the Second Amendment. So that's going back. I think that case is on a quick path back to the Supreme Court in all likelihood. So at some point, the Supreme Court will take one of these, what we refer to as hardware bans, either rifles or magazines or both, which will be an important, as modern sporting rifles, by far the most popular rifle being sold in the United States today, has been really for a long time. And that market really took off. It always existed, even going back. Colt started selling civilian versions of the AR in 1963. And, they weren't particularly popular, but I think the ban in place for 10 years increased their popularity. Like people, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why do you say I can't have that?
Yeah. Like Cohiba cigars.
The reality is right. Yeah. And then you had people coming back from having served overseas that used the rifle, the military version, the automatic. And so it just, took off. And so that segment of the show grew. There are now about 25 million or more modern sporting rifles in civilian possession in the United States. There are more of them than there are Ford F-150s on the road today.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, if you go out of your house and go down to Park City, you'll see a F-150 in about 5 minutes.
Oh yeah,
right?
there's a couple in the driveway here.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh, so
you don't even have to go outside.
Yeah, I don't have to leave. I don't have to leave the compound. I like it up here. So I had Malcolm Gladwell on the podcast about a month and a half ago, and as part of his podcast,
I listened.
Oh, did you listen to it?
I listened to that, and then I've listened to the revisionist history. I'm up to, I guess, the last episode.
Okay. Yeah, it was really interesting, and so he sent me all those because he did a section of this season on firearms, and I really like Malcolm Gladwell just in general. I love his writing, and I'm a fan of his work, but he's certainly no fan of the Second Amendment. He's very open about that from the beginning, and he's from Canada, but I just love how he looks at issues or looks at history and just maybe offers a different perspective, and I could have a great conversation with him. So I was really looking forward to it, and I listened to all those podcasts, and that one that was really interesting is when he sits down with the gun control, I forget which organization it was, and got so angry with him that the guy didn't know what he was talking about, and they're on the same essentially.
I listened. Yeah, I listened to your podcast with him, and then because of that, I went and then listened to this series he's done on revisionist history, and so the person he was talking to was Josh Sugarman from the Violence Policy Center, who is the guy who came up with the rhetorical device to call ARs assault weapons. And he wrote, we can confuse the public into believing they're machine guns, and it'll be easier to ban them. So that one was I love that one. I was like, wow. I was like telling all my guys, you got to go listen to this. You got to listen to this. You got to use this. And so it was really interesting because you're right. Malcolm says flat out, I'm a Canadian. I don't think anyone should have guns, and he doesn't like the Supreme Court's rulings. And logic, but he really did call that guy out. And I remember on your podcast, he was like, can I curse? Can I say that?
Yeah. He was angry. He was angry, and he told me that he took a bunch out. They didn't air a bunch of that because he was so angry. They used what they needed to for the show, and each episode is about 45 minutes to an hour, typically on revisionist history. But yeah, it was insulting to him that someone that essentially held his same view of firearms would try to take advantage of the ignorance of the American populace and try to leverage that. That was offensive to him, and that was really cool that he called that out.
Yeah, it was, because it is. Here's a interesting fact that people don't know. Josh Sugarman grew up in Newtown, Connecticut, which is talk about a small world. That's where NSSF was headquartered. That's where that horrible tragedy took place. But he's just intellectually dishonest, trying to fool people.
Yeah, that's what offended Malcolm
to pass a political agenda. So
And so for that podcast,
I have to say, I thought Malcolm was a little bit disrespectful to Justice Alito in his podcast.
In that first episode, first couple episodes?
When he's Alito's never been on the New York City subway or whatever. So I thought he was a little disrespectful to Justice Alito, but I really enjoyed it. I got one more to listen to, though. It's the last one, but
with
it's been really enjoyable.
The Abdullah Pratt one, the one where he talks to the Chicago doctor who goes out and teaches kids how to use tourniquets and that sort of a thing.
Take on this holiday season with the help of Navy Federal Credit Union. When you use the Navy Federal Cash Rewards card, you can earn up to 1.75 cash back on all purchases. You can redeem your rewards as soon as you earn them. And using the Navy Federal mobile app makes redeeming easier than ever. Enjoy the rewards of cash back without any annual fee, balance transfer, or foreign transaction fees. There are no limitations on rewards, and they never expire while your account is open. Learn how you can get cheer to last all year with the Cash Rewards card at NavyFederal.org. Our members are the mission. Insured by NCUA, rates are variable and range between 14.90% and 18% APR based on credit worthiness. ATM fees for cash advances are up to $1 at non-Navy Federal ATMs. Message and data rates may apply. Visit NavyFederal.org for more information. Let me tell you about First Form. They have amazing products. My personal favorites are the protein sticks and the Micro Factor Daily Nutrient Packs. And why do I like them so much? Because First Form makes it super easy to get quality protein and nutrients on the go. And I always seem to be on the go. While their products are top-notch quality, what I like the most about them are their values. First Form is so much more than a supplement company. They are deeply committed to both American jobs and your personal well-being. At First Form, they value people. In fact, the only thing they've automated is a tape machine, a symbol of their dedication to providing jobs and making lives better. They care about employing people, nurturing their growth, and genuinely improving lives. Their mission is simple. First Form is there to help you reach your fitness and wellness goals. They believe in a partnership where, if you meet them halfway, they'll help you make progress. Go to firstform.com/Jack Carr to receive free shipping on any orders over $75. That's one, the number one, stphorm.com/Jack Carr. Once again, that's one, the number one, stphorm.com/Jack Carr, and receive free shipping on any orders over $75.
I wanted to have him on last year for the Bomber Mafia, for his book, The Bomber Mafia, because I'd listened to it, I'd read it, I'm interested in that part of history, obviously, and then it didn't work out to have him on for that book. So now he came on for this, and I was like, oh, geez, a lot more preparation needs to be done because I don't know where this conversation's going to go. And so I had like stacks of papers like ready to go in case we went down, if we went into this kind of back and forth on gun control. But I think it was more beneficial to just show that you can have a conversation with someone, you can respect someone on the other side. Even if you disagree, especially because it's tough to disagree over something that's so fundamental to the human condition and a natural right to defend your life and the lives of your family members and to keep the citizenry free from oppressive governments. Like that's pretty foundational. And so it's not like you disagree about whether, the latest movie that just came out is good or bad. No, it's different than that. So it is very personal. But even so it takes a little bit of effort to have civil conversations with people that want to take away that most basic of natural rights. So point being, I was ready to go. And I didn't use any of that stuff. We just got to talk about books and movies and all. We had a great time talking to one another and talked about the show, I think, in an appropriate way. And it was just a very natural conversation. But I had no idea where it was going to go. So I had all stacks of stuff over here. And I grabbed a couple of them to come in here so we could talk about a couple of the things that I wanted to talk about, but didn't get to because of time. And we were just having so much fun talking about other things. But yeah, I thought he did a really good job with particularly that episode where he was offended by the intellectual dishonesty of somebody on his quote unquote side.
It was really interesting when he talked about it on your show, but then to listen to the podcast where he just calls them out, it was amazing.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was really shocked when I listened to that. This is
coming from a guy who agrees with him, but do it honestly. Don't lie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought that was so my respect for Malcolm Gladwell increased because of that exchange.
He's still wrong about the Second Amendment, but
yes, and I was ready to try to bring him over, with all the stuff I had here. But so when you talk about you're so busy doing everything that you do and defending the Second Amendment, how much work or what touch points do you have with not just defense, but offense? And by that, I mean solutions to whether it's you know, real or not imagined, because, you know, these deaths are real. But when you talk about schools, let's say schools, and as a citizen and of a husband with and a parent with kids that are going to these schools, if I was a military, let's say, officer in charge of a base, multiple bases, let's say overseas, and my bases kept getting attacked. People kept walking in and detonating suicide vests, or kept walking on and killing my troops. You know, today might be different than, let's say, in the 40s or something, when people are actually held accountable and not just fail forward and upward. But I probably would not be in that position for very long. Or I could look around, I'd probably be replaced, and then someone would come in and look around and say, oh, we should put some guards here. We should put some security measures in place to protect this base. And we neglect to do that for the softest targets out there and our most valuable resource. So what are do you focus at all on that, or what are your personal thoughts on that?
I mean, NSSF is kind of one of the leading voices, firearm safety education, right? So, but we've worked on a number. So we have, for example, Project Child Safe, which has been around since the late 90s. We've distributed, over 41 million firearm safety education kits, including a gun lock. Every manufacturer has been providing a lock in the box or locking mechanism for decades.
I think I have a bunch of those in the trash can over there, by the way.
But the point is, it's not about the lock. It's about making sure you are a responsible gun owner and don't leave the gun loaded and laying around accessible to kids or others who shouldn't have access. So right behind you have the safe, right? So that's, everyone's situation is different, but you got to be responsible. And then we work with ATF on a number of programs to reduce straw purchasing, a program called Don't Lie for the Other Guy. We've been doing that since 99, 2000. We are working with ATF now on an effort called Operation Secure Store to reduce the number of burglaries of gun stores. And if they burglarize a gun store, they can steal a lot of guns at one time.
How prevalent is that?
It was going up. ATF came to us and said, hey, we've noticed a marked increase in smash and grab burglaries, and let's work together. And so we have, and we've been able to drive that number down. It spiked during COVID and in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd, but we're raising awareness to retailers, helping them get resources to secure their store, better display cases, bars in the window, cameras, whatever is appropriate for their store. And when ATF now responds to every single burglary, you may find this surprising. I did. It used to be the case that if a gun store was burglarized, ATF may or may not have shown up. Now they show up to every single one, and they work with the dealer to find out exactly what was stolen, work with local law enforcement. They put the word out to other dealers in the area, because it's usually a gang and a crew, and they'll go around and hit a couple of stores.
Oh, wow.
In an area in a short period of time, and they're stealing guns for the gang. And those, they hit the street and bad things happen. So an ATF offers a reward, we match that reward, and things like that. So we do that. We have ATF, I'm sure have seen at the SHOT Show. They're the busiest booth at the show is the ATF booth.
Oh, I always avoid that booth for some reason. So in the back of my
dealers want to, find out, how do I do this? How do I do that? Is this the right way to handle this? They have those conversations. So,
interesting.
But on the legislative front, one of our efforts started after tragedy in Sandy Hook. We launched a campaign called Fix NICS. So what we learned was that, and it was really underscored by the terrible incident in Sutherland Springs, where states and, as it turned out, DOD was not putting disqualifying records into the background check system. Particularly, it was an acute problem for people like dangerously mentally ill. Right? States were not putting the records in because of state privacy laws. We went and got the law changed in 16 states so that these records, and we're not talking the doctor's notes, right? It's just the adjudication court record that says this person's been adjudicated. And that goes into the background check system. And then we learned that DOD wasn't doing it, and that's how that guy was able to pass background check, even though he was a prohibited person like 3 or 4 different ways. So we work with Senator Cornyn to pass the Fix NICS Act to require the federal government to get those records into the system. So you didn't have that situation repeat, and then to work with the states to make sure they had the resources to get the records into the background check system. We're not talking about expanding by any means who's a prohibited person, just, people who are convicted felons, are dangerous people or dangerously mentally ill. Nobody wants them being able to purchase a firearm from a licensed dealer. And then we work with Senator Cornyn on some of the language in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, like to make sure that there were more money for mental health resources, more money for school security, and then coming up with a definition for illegal firearms trafficking or for store purchasing, which has been sort of floating out there. We didn't support the bill overall because they were we didn't like the red flag language. It wasn't adequate to protect due process. And engage in as we've seen, this administration is, totally misinterpreted, engage in the business, and they've got this proposed rule out there. And all of your listeners, I would encourage you to put in public comments on engage in the business, because they're trying to basically create universal background checks and registration by trying to sweep individuals who sell one gun, that you're now a dealer and you have to have a license. And if you don't have a license, you're committing a felony. So it's just absurd. So that's a big issue. But, on the school security front, our position, it should be up to the local community if they have guards in the school, but obviously there's a lot of retired military out there that'd be more than happy to and qualified to do that, or retired law enforcement. The incident occurred in Tennessee. I was just really kind of shocked that at this point in time, they didn't have bullet resistant or shatterproof glass. That they were, that's how the guy got in Sandy Hook. That surprised me. I'm like, come on, seems like an obvious thing to do, or to have, security. You have these soft targets, these gun-free zones just attract these. The evidence is pretty clear. It attracts, bad guys. They know no one's there to stop them. So,
you have your most valuable resource and softest target, and continue to do nothing. Over all these years, both sides of the aisle. And it seems like apply common sense. Both Carl von Clausewitz and George Marshall, they thought that the most important attribute of a battlefield leader is common sense. And so if you're to look at this, regardless of political leaning, and think, oh, look, here's a soft target. What can we do to make our kids safer? There's some little things you can do. There are some very large things you can do. There are some things in the middle that you can do, but you can make these hard targets harder. And don't tell me we can't do it because it's too expensive. Untold billions to Ukraine. We put a man on the moon. We led the world to victory in World War II. TSA after 9/11. And you can hope that these soft targets aren't going to get hit again, or you can take some action. And you can put all these police officers that have to go back and do paperwork. Guess where they can do that paperwork? They can do it next to a school right there. They have to park somewhere to do some paperwork. They can go next to these schools. So you can just put that presence right there. Building a new precinct, guess what? Put it next to a school. Building multiple kind of outstations, put them next to schools. You can make it.
It wouldn't cost that much to hire. It wouldn't cost that much to hire retired military, retired law enforcement, or to have, it just seems to me to be common sense.
Harden these targets, apply some common sense to it. It's that's the hardest part. And of course, like you said, the mental health side of the house, we saw from the 80s up to today what's happened with how we treat mentally ill people in this country, and that's, it's not a separate issue. There is overlap. So there are things that you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going all the way back to like Tucson and Aurora, and being asked by the and like you look, and unfortunately it's a long list where at bottom, right, these high profile tragedies almost always involve mental health. And so I've said many times, these events are occurring not because of an absence of gun control or a failure of gun control. It's a failure of our mental health system in the United States. These people do not get the help they need, before these tragedies occur. I mean, look at the Aurora movie shooting. Parents knew the kid was trouble. Counselor, Tucson, the parents said, "Oh yeah, he was upstairs talking to himself." They at one point removed the battery from his car so he couldn't go anywhere because they were so worried. And sadly, the list goes on. But just the other day, there was an op-ed in paper, kind of inside the Beltway political paper called The Hill, by the head of the Brady Center and a mental health advocate, saying that mental health is not responsible. It's not the cause. Well, look, there are a lot of causes to crime, but you cannot deny that mental health has been a factor in these high-profile shootings.
Yeah. And even aside from that, we should be taking care of citizens that have these issues regardless.
Yes. Exactly. So,
so
there was more money, Yep.
Yeah.
For that, and there have been other bills.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. Yeah. So I pulled these stats. I pulled the crime in the United States. And so I pulled up the murder victims online. So this is from the FBI here. And so handguns used in murders in 2019, 6,368. Okay. Rifles used in murders, 364. Okay. Knives.
And that's rifles of every kind.
Yeah, of every kind. Knives used in murders, 1,476. Okay. Blunt objects, hammers, clubs, baseball bats, 397, more than rifles. Yet there is this focus on a rifle that really has permeated the debate, for lack of a better term. And so if you're to look at these numbers and then just look at the battle space essentially and wonder why there's such a concerted effort to ban a rifle that's used in less murder than blunt objects, way more than knives, way less than knives, I mean. So the next question, logically, would be why? And what's your answer to the why?
Well, the answer is that two things. One, they tried to ban handguns back in the 70s and 80s. Brady United was called the center to ban handguns, and then they became Handgun Control Inc. And they couldn't get any support for it, and it didn't happen. So they shifted their focus now, and it goes back to what we were talking about before, like creating this term assault weapons, which has no meaning to the industry, right? Like to the people who design firearms, that is a political term. It's not an industry term. It doesn't mean anything. Assault rifle has a meaning, and that's an automatic firearm, but not a semi-automatic. So they've latched onto that. They find these high-profile, rare, but still high-profile tragedies, which no one wants to see happen. And they fixate on that, and that becomes their cause. But I don't see, at least federally, the votes I don't think are there to ban modern sporting rails, certainly not in the Senate. And I don't think it would be constitutional. And that's being litigated now. So, and Heller was very clear, right? Heller was about banning a handgun ban in DC. And the court said even though some handguns are misused in crime, it's still overwhelmingly chosen by law-abiding citizens for self-defense. And so you can't ban handguns just like because a few people misuse them, right? So, so the Supreme Court has said you can't ban handguns. So that's kind of off the table. So now the question becomes, well, can you ban rifles? Are they quote unquote arms, and are they commonly used? And they try to, the argument now that they make in addition to like magazines aren't arms at all, they're just an accessory. They try to argue that, well, these rifles are not commonly used for self-defense. And that's, of course, not the test. And the Supreme Court's been very clear on that. You know, even in Heller, right, people, they commonly used handguns. They own them for the purpose of using them for self-defense. It doesn't require you to have pulled the trigger, which is just another ridiculous argument. They try to make those arguments that you have to have pulled the trigger. And so increasingly now we're seeing courts just dispatch that argument as basically frivolous.
Yeah.
The court has said typically possessed doesn't mean you possess it for self-defense. You don't have to actually have pulled the trigger. And isn't that a good thing, right? Like, yeah. So, but they just, they have a political agenda and they are not going to stop.
Yeah. That's why it's so important that you're out there and, organizations like yours are out there fighting this fight for all of us, really, because everybody that has a job not in that space is focused on that, raising family, raising kids. And they're like, what just happened in the Supreme Court? Or what just happened in California? Oh, wow. Now it's going to affect my kids and my grandkids and it's going to change the fabric of the nation and consolidate more power at the federal level. And it's something that we all need to be well aware of.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's everybody, you got to pay attention, right? I mean, Thomas Jefferson talked about democracy only works if people participate and pay attention. So
we're distracted by TikTok. We're distracted by TikTok right now.
Yeah.
And I wrote down a couple other things here. So there are over 300 federal gun laws. Is that right? And over 20,000 at the state and local levels.
Here's more than that.
Is that?
I mean, the statistic that
you can't even keep track of how many of these things are.
Gun laws goes back to like the 70s or something. A long time ago, I kind of tried to go all the way back to where that was first used. You couldn't even count them. There's way more than 20,000, right? Every year, states pass more and more.
You can't even keep track. The Bar Association doesn't even know how many federal laws are on the books. Have you read a book called 3 Felonies a Day? It's fantastic. It came out, a while ago, over a decade ago, but it talks about how the average person wakes up, has breakfast, drops the kids at school, goes to work, comes home, has dinner, tucks the kids in, and in the course of that day, unbeknownst to them, they committed 3 felonies because there are so many laws on the books that the American Bar Association can't even give you a specific number. That's
I haven't read the book, but I've heard about it, and there are. Well, part of that is politicians just like to pass laws, say it's a felony, so they sound tough, and it's been the criminal law has been federalized, right? So you have all of these laws that make things felonies. So you can just easily commit several federal felonies just going about your daily life.
Yeah. That's why I stay up here. That's why I stay up here on the top of this mountain.
Well, I think actually this is going to become an issue in the Supreme Court this term. They've taken that case where a guy, a bad dude, they had a misdemeanor or domestic violence restraining order, and the court said, well, there's no history of tradition, got appealed and affirmed, and the Department of Justice filed a cert petition with the Supreme Court, and they've taken the case and they're going to hear argument. But I think my guess is, and I just tweeted about this morning because there was an article in the Washington Post about it. I think the court is going to reverse. This is my guess, just going to reverse and say, no, there is a history and tradition in the United States going back to the founding of keeping firearms away from dangerous people. You can have somebody, it's charged with a violent crime, can be denied bail. So, or conditions put on his bail. One of them could be you can't possess firearms, that sort of thing. So I think that, and Justice Barrett, she was on the Court of Appeals, wrote a dissent in a case called Cantor, where she said, that, simplifying it, but basically the distinction is between dangerous and non-dangerous. And so, you shouldn't deny fundamental constitutional rights to somebody if they're not dangerous, like the Second Amendment, because some paperwork crime, right? Even the Gun Control Act itself has felonies that are carved out from being, and they're basically white collar crimes carved out, and federal prohibition on the Gun Control Act doesn't apply if you're convicted of one of those. So I think the distinction they will make, is, dangerous versus non-dangerous, and it's less about whether it's felony or misdemeanor, because you have all of these felonies, you can be convicted of for like paperwork stuff, like, you inappropriately got food stamps or something from a federal program. You're convicted of a felony. Now you lose your Second Amendment rights for life, right? Like, so you're not dangerous, right? And you still have self-defense needs. And so I think I suspect that's where that case is headed.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are pulling their hair out that, oh my God, they're going to allow people who beat their wives, to have guns. I just don't. I think the court took the case for that reason.
Yeah.
My guess is that Justice Barrett is really the driver there.
Interesting.
Because of her dissent in that case called Cantor, in the Seventh Circuit back in 2019, when she went on the court.
Have you tried the Jack Carr Hooten Young Warrior Proof Whiskey? If not, I highly recommend it. If you don't know Hooten Young, check them out at hootenyoung.com. It was started by Norm Hooten and Tim Young, and born of a love of whiskey and cigars. If Norm Hooten sounds familiar, it may be because you recognize the name from the film Black Hawk Down, where Delta Force operator Hoot was portrayed by Eric Bana. You might have caught 2 references to Hooten Young in the Terminal List Amazon Prime video series. It's the whiskey James Reese and Boozer are drinking in episode 1. You can't fake aged whiskey. My Jack Carr Hooten Young collaboration is aged 16 years. It's 125 proof and bottled straight from the barrel. This Jack Carr Warrior Proof American whiskey turned out better than I could have possibly imagined. As Norm says, Hooten Young was created to help folks slow down, bond with the people around them, and remember those who are no longer here. Go to hootenyoung.com and get your hands on a bottle today. That's HOOTENYOUNG.com.
I picked up in preparation for the Malcolm Gladwell podcast, I pulled off my shelf one of John Lott's books where he goes through specifically the repeated, essentially, talking points, and it's amazing, not just this issue, but across the board. And of course, the old adage, you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes truth.
Yes.
And he goes through those statements by people who just repeat them, but that have platforms, whether they're an anchor on a news channel or whatever, about other countries and how there's no violence over there because the guns are illegal. And he goes through and he goes, boom, boom, all these European countries that are cited as so safe, specifically from people using guns because they're illegal. And he goes through and just, here's their numbers. And he puts them right out there. So I had those all highlighted, ready for the Malcolm Gladwell thing, just in case, because it does get repeated so often. And then you go back and you read these and you're like, oh, I think I remember that. That was in the news. Oh yeah. That many people died, or that many people died in this country, but they're not supposed to have guns over there. But it's not something that is, it is not common knowledge, because the lie or misinformation or whatever it might, the ignorant statements are just repeated so often that you say, oh yeah, we got to do it. Whatever country X does over there, not realizing that country X has a much worse problem than here. And what did I write down for that? That U.S. has the most guns, I think, per capita in the world, but ranks 30th in gun-related homicides. And then 95% of murders in Chicago are with handguns, yet the focus is on banning this certain rifle. And I mean, it's just amazing when you really dig down into it. And I just,
Professor Lott does tremendous work. There's also Professor Kleck has done great work on like defensive gun uses. And there's another book out there now, and they have a website or certainly a Twitter account called Gun Facts. And the guy really does a great job just going through data. He's kind of a data scientist guy, but like, putting the lie to all of these statistics coming out from the other side. So I'll send you the information in the book. It's worth reading or just following his Twitter, Gun Facts.
Yeah.
He does a really good job. I've come to start relying upon it for information.
Yeah.
He really gets into the data and demonstrates it's not what the other side says. And they have, whether it's purposeful or just lazy, their talking points get repeated in the mainstream media over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's so hard to kind of break through, get your message across.
Yeah, I mean, it's very emotional as well. But my hope would be that instead of being distracted by or manipulated by different platforms or entities or organization, that citizens could look at an issue, study that history, and then come to the whatever conclusion they might come to, and then vote for whoever they want to represent those ideas in state, local, federal levels. But if you studied this issue and still think that it is a good idea to give up one of the most effective means to defend your life and the lives of your spouse and kids, and if you honestly look at this issue and come to that conclusion, I guess. But isn't it odd that those same people you're giving up this right to are surrounded by people with firearms? It's just, it's tough. But people are easily manipulated, and all these platforms allow for that manipulation if you're not aware of it. Anything I look at, my first question is, how is this statement, this article, this tweet, whatever it might be, how does it want to manipulate me? Okay, now I'll look at it through
critical
that lens.
thinking, right? Yeah,
that's something that we're not teaching. Those same kids that we need to protect in these schools are not being taught to think critically or logically.
Feelings, And
that's one of the most important things is how to think. How to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
And unfortunately now I think it's more of the what to think, when obviously much more helpful if you're going to be a citizen in a free society.
More indoctrination, not education.
How to think. It's tough. Wow. Hey, are you hopeful for the future, not just for Second Amendment type issues, but across the board? Or if you're not, how do you try to remain hopeful?
I mean, try to be an optimist. I get it's frustrating, and I don't really know what all the solutions are, but I have to remain hopeful. Our country's been through dark times. As bad as crime is and the murder rate now, I mean, it was worse in the 90s during the crack epidemic. Murders were higher. So not that we want to break that record, of course, but so I think, things ebb and flow. I think the public, this will be an important election, I think, for the future. But there's a lot of disagreement in this country. And I think going back to point you made earlier, people need to learn how to disagree but not be disagreeable, how to have a civilized conversation, to make your arguments using facts and evidence and try to persuade. And unfortunately that you don't see enough of that. I think social media has been unhelpful to having a dialogue, particularly when people can sort of just have a silly Twitter name or whatever, just say outrageous things, toss bombs, and that's just not helpful. But I have this conversation with my wife every once in a while. She says, "Oh, this is so bad." I go, it's not good. But if you go back and look at some of the political discourse back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, it was worse than we see now. It's just there's more of it because of mass media, but the attacks on political opponents were even nastier than they are now. It's not to say what's going on now is good. It's not. But hopefully some leadership will emerge on really both sides of the aisle and turn the temperature down so people can have rational conversations. It's frustrating for us to, we're always positioned as the enemy, blood on our hands. We don't care when it's just nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, people in the industry care very much. And, we've got a number of programs, I mentioned some of them. We kind of put them under the banner of real solutions for safer communities, trying to push that message, to, opinion makers, public policy decision makers. We don't have the ability to run, we're not Coca-Cola. We can't run a national ad. We can't buy an ad on the Super Bowl. Even if we could afford it, they wouldn't let us run an ad. Right. So, but trying to get the message across, saying, hey, there is common ground, and people should focus on where you can find common ground. But that's you can reach common ground without surrendering your principles, core beliefs. Right? We're never going to surrender the Second Amendment, but are there things that people can work towards, like better school security, like more mental health resources to address these problems?
Yeah, those seem like some basics right there. But for whatever reason, we do not want to. We might want to, but we don't protect our most valuable resource that are also our softest targets. It drives me absolutely. It's so frustrating. But who's that division? When we talk about division of a citizenry, who's that benefit? Well, it benefits politicians who want to solidify bases and run campaigns and raise funds, and it benefits these social media companies that get you clicking and can manipulate your behavior and thoughts. So I think the awareness of those things is at the base level important, and part of that critical thinking, recognize that you're being manipulated and recognize who division benefits. And it's certainly not us. It is certainly not us. So I try to remain hopeful as well, but it's very difficult sometimes, especially at the end of the day, pouring that glass of wine with my wife.
Keep the faith, brother.
I'm trying. But yeah, try to be thoughtful about things and, do the best I can. And what else can we really do?
It comes down to being a good parent, engaging with your children, talking to them, so they grow up and have these critical thinking skills. It's, everything from, one of the things I think that came out of COVID was, kids were home doing online learning. Parents got to see what they were being fed and said, what the heck is this? And then you saw that surge of people showing up at school meetings saying, oh, no. We're not having any of this.
Yeah, right? Those videos are incredible. Those videos that come out of those school board meetings. It just goes to show, if nothing else, it goes to show how important it is to engage at the local level. And it's tough if you're out there with a job and you're providing for a family and you're building a business and you have employees that depend on you, and then you're going to run for a school board. But it is so important. And I think those videos that come out of parents going in front and getting shut down in front of school boards, shouted down by people who are supposed to give them the time to speak, having security escort them out. That's pretty eye-opening. And I hope it encourages people to get involved at the local level or in some way, shape, or form.
Chilling when the FBI starts looking into these parents as domestic terrorists. That is very chilling.
And that goes back to how many laws are on the books, because it is so difficult to figure out. Just now, we're figuring out taxes when you have merch in 50 states, 30 countries, whatever we have. And then if you're going to film in different countries and different states, you definitely have to hire someone to do that. And it's very expensive to get someone to make sure that everything is lined up so that the IRS comes, boom, it's right here. And that is their only job to make sure that stuff is all that you're abiding by every single laws that change every year in every state and federally. So it is but once again, come back to that question, why? And well, perhaps so that you can be targeted, and you can, because you can walk in, because all these things change. It makes it much easier if you're changing these laws every year that are hard enough to keep up with anyway, very expensive to keep up with anyway, if you want to make sure you're doing it right. Well, now, oh, look at this. You didn't dot this I. Guess what? Felony, misdemeanor, whatever it might be. It just allows you to be targeted more efficiently.
Jack, it sounds like you're about to run for office.
Negative. I think I'm gonna.
It's a hard no.
That's the easiest question I get asked, and I've gotten a few phone calls on that over the past few months, especially with Romney not running here in Utah. The phone rang a few times, but I'll just do what I can. I think you can still have a voice, and I can do these things and be myself, and by doing what I'm doing now as an author, and I think I'd be more effective. And plus, I don't operate well in that middle zone. Like I can do this, and then I can do the stuff downrange in Iraq and Afghanistan. The middle part, the politics side, I will not be. It's important to know your strengths and know your limitations. And I am very aware of mine. I would not do well in those situations, especially when I watch some of these arguments in Congress. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just wouldn't. It's not my battle space.
Makes your brain hurt at times.
Yeah, call me when you need. No, I'll do what I can as a citizen, without running for office. I think that's probably
well, as you know, it's the rise of the administrative state. I mean, all of these laws and regulations just burden somebody from starting a business, running a business, growing a business, employing people, creating wealth.
Yeah.
And then in the end, paying more taxes. It's Kafkaesque, like
it's wild.
Pull your hair out, like it's just, it's daunting. It's exhausting. It's expensive.
Yeah, it is all of those things, no doubt about it. But like I said, try to remain hopeful. And man, thank you for taking all this time today. It's so great to see. I know we wanted to do it in person because you pass through Park City every now and again, and we get to link up. Yeah, when you pass through, and that's always fun.
The last time I saw you in person was at Park City at dinner, and the very next day I broke my leg skiing.
Oh, jeez. Oh, I forgot you. Oh my gosh, that was we were with Nick, right? We were with old Seifert. Yep, Athlon Outdoors. Yeah. So hanging out together over there, eating some wild game at Nick's place. Hopefully we can do that again soon. How's the leg? Are you ready to get back on the planks and hit the mountain?
Yeah, I mean, I was I was out of commission for a little while, but I was back skiing last year and a little bit the year before. So yeah. Good. Well, and I'm planning a trip right now. We're going to go to Steamboat because I have one of my kids is spending the winter in Steamboat.
Oh, nice. Awesome. I've never skied there, but when you're in Park City and you have kids and they're on teams and all that stuff, it's hard to leave this place and go to other places to ski. But eventually we'll branch out and
so I heard you mention, I can't remember who you mentioned that your kids are ski racing.
Yeah.
So my kids are ski racers. In fact, my youngest daughter raced in college.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, so she just graduated. So yeah.
Well, we're in the place for it. I mean,
skiing has been a big part of our life.
Oh, so great. I mean, it's you can't throw a rock around here without hitting an Olympic athlete of some kind, and it's just it draws your high altitude training. We have great places to ski, great facilities. We have a Woodward down the street. You have that Utah Olympic Park, which is amazing. You have people flying off jumps into the pool that has those those aerators in it. So anyway, it's an incredible spot for that. So, but I try to get the kids out so that they realize that the world is not Coronado, California, or Park City, Utah. Yeah. There are other places out there, and we're very fortunate to be where we are. So, I guess that's important as well.
Hey, I can't go without mentioning that's a really nice shotgun.
Hey, that's right. We got that together. That's right. Yeah, that was amazing out in New Hampshire. But remember, I was just looking at that on the wall. And luckily, it's a Parker for those that are wondering.
Yes.
Luckily,
a real Parker.
Luckily, it has a crack stock because if it didn't, it would be out of my price range. But yeah, Damascus barrels, and I want to take it on a hunt. I want to take it on like one hunt and then put it back up here and preserve it. But I think the stock will handle it with those low velocity loads. So get those in there. Yeah. They make loads for old shotguns like this, some specialty. But yeah, it's a beautiful shotgun. It is really cool. But yeah, we got that together.
Well, next time you're in, if you make it to New Hampshire, let me know. We'll go do some bird hunting.
You've been back there since we were there, right? We were there with Katie Pavlich was there.
Oh,
We
yeah.
had the
I'm a
so
member.
fun.
Yeah.
That's a good spot.
Actually, it is. And it's even bigger now. He's got more property. But that was the very first, the owner's my best friend. So I was the very first member of the club. So.
Oh, wow. Wow. And I forget exactly. I was just staring at this on the wall, and then he walked up next to me, right? And was like, you like that? And I said, oh yeah, it's beautiful. And he's like, well, take it down. And I took it down, was looking at it.
He got it from a member.
He's like, it's for sale.
And yeah.
I'm like, for sale. Well, I was like,
and we were talking, and I have some pictures of you looking at the gun on the couch.
Yep.
And I was like, it's the real deal. It's an actual Parker. And and I can't remember what you paid for it, if I ever knew.
Well, it's certainly nothing near what it would be. I got a great deal, and but because of that cracked stock on the other side, it's patched up and looks pretty solid. So I guess I'll find out when I actually shoot it. But yeah, it was very cool. That was really cool to pick that up. And that was a great time. We had an amazing time out there. So beautiful, such a beautiful spot, and the food was amazing. I mean, that was a great day. That was so much fun. So much fun. But yeah, it's man, hopefully we can do it again soon, and hopefully I'll see you at SHOT. I don't think it's going to happen this January just because there's some other things on the on the schedule. But I will be back as soon as I possibly can, and mostly
if I'm out in Park City, I'll ring you up. But
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for what you do, and for everybody at NSSF. Please pass along my best, and thank them for me for holding the line for all of us.
Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for what you do. Keep writing. Can't wait to hear what the title of number 7 is.
Oh, it's coming out here. It should be, but by the time this podcast drops, it will probably have dropped. So it's coming soon. But yeah, I'll be back to writing.
So here's the problem with your books: is every time a new one comes out, I feel like I have to go back and read them all again. Because
I like the connective tissue. I was always a fan of that.
Like, you got to go back. It's like I want to watch a video recap before I start the next one.
Yep, a lot of people do that. A lot of people start reading them all or listening them all again, and it was just natural for me to do that. I think it's. My publisher would like me to always say, "You all stand alone. Pick them up and start wherever." But really, it's a richer reading experience if you read them from the beginning. But I always like the connective tissue in TV shows as a kid in the 80s. So the Magnum episodes that connected, not necessarily a one-parter or two-parter, but ones that spanned seasons or that spanned episodes in a season. Like episode 1, something's mentioned or something happens, and then episode 6 or 12, there's connective tissue between those two that you only really get. Like, you make it through the episode and it's wonderful, but if you've seen that other one, it's even richer because you have that backstory.
Yes.
And so I
love I like with the end of the book, it's like, okay, now what's he going to do next? What's coming next? Like, trying to figure it out.
Well, I'll be figuring it out as soon as this podcast is over. I'll get back at it.
Well, I better let you go.
Man. Oh, well, no, thank you so much again. And yeah, take care out there. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Well, let me know if you're going to make it to SHOT. If not, let's figure out another time.
Sounds great. Take care.
Visiting with you.
I've been a fan of Black Rifle Coffee Company since their inception. I love when veterans leave the military and pursue their passion. In this case, coffee. The coffee is fantastic, and as an added benefit, the company is built on quality, patriotism, and giving back to the veteran and first responder communities. I've been a subscriber to the BRCC Coffee Club for years and love it. My favorite is Silencer Smooth. It gets delivered every single month. The Black Rifle Coffee Club. Being part of the club gives you the power to elevate your coffee experience to the next level. The Black Rifle Coffee Club puts you in the driver's seat. You pick the texture and the roast you want, the frequency you want it delivered, and the quantity. You get to completely personalize your club orders, ensuring that your favorite coffee is sent to your door exactly how you want it, when you want it. Right now, Black Rifle Coffee is offering an exclusive opportunity for new Coffee Club members. Join today and enjoy 30% off your first order when you use the discount code DANGERCLOSE at checkout. That's right, 30% off just for being a part of our growing coffee community. Remember to use the discount code DangerClose at checkout. Thank you for tuning in to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. To find out more about Larry Keane, be sure and follow him on Twitter at LKEANE. And to find out more about the NSSF, go to nssf.org. You can follow me on the social channels at Jack Carr USA. OfficialJackCarr.com is the website. Click on shop in the upper right-hand corner for the merch. And if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure and leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until the next time, take care out there. Stay safe. Be strong. Keep fighting.